Good morning and welcome to our webinar, the 9th in our series, Community Choice, Energy, Power, and Purpose. Thank you all for joining us. This is a webinar that's of the Center for Climate Protection and the Clean Power Exchange, which is a program of the Center for Climate Protection. Thank you all for being here. This is your webinar team today. Myself on the left, Woody Hastings, Renewable Energy Manager for the Center for Climate Protection, and Nina Turner, our Renewable Energy Program Associate. And thank you to our sponsor, the Jonathan Logan Family Foundation, for making these webinars possible and for making our Clean Power Exchange program possible. Our presenters today are two rock stars of the community choice community, Don Weiss, Chief Executive Officer of MCE Clean Energy, and Beth Vaughn, the Executive Director of the California Community Choice Association. So thank you very much to our presenters for being willing to step up and provide their presentations today. A little bit of housekeeping before we get rolling. The webinar is being recorded. If you're having any difficulties, we will do our best to resolve those on the spot, but it is being recorded, and so we can send you the recording, and hopefully the recording will be good quality. So, hopefully that'll all work out. Everyone is in listen-only mode. Enter your questions in the control panel at any time. You should all have a control panel there that has a little pull down for logging in questions. The question and answer will be in the last 15 or 20 minutes. Nina will be helping with those questions, and so just type those in whenever you want, and we will do that at the end. Thank you. There are several handouts today, just the speaker bios and the slide decks, so those should also be accessible from your control panel in the handout section. So now just a little bit about our work in the community choice arena, working on expanding community choice around the state. A lot of our work is embodied in a website for the folks that aren't familiar with it. cleanpowerexchange.org features quite a number of resources about community choice, an interactive map that is very information rich and provides information on all 482 cities in the state and all 58 counties. You gotta click in the county to get the pull down menus for the cities. So that's how that map works. We do publish e-news every 2 weeks. So if you're not subscribed to that, subscribe to our e-news for your geographic area or for the statewide news. And then lots of other reports and resources on community choice on that website. We have a symposium coming up on June 4th and 5th in Sacramento, and this webinar is really sort of a little bit of a preview, prelude with some sampling of some of the kinds of things that will be coming up in June. So we'll get to that in a bit. We also produce white papers and, of course, these webinars that are roughly on a monthly basis. So a little bit about our work. You know, the title of this webinar and of the symposium is Power and Purpose. So, you know, community choice agencies, you know, necessarily are involved in power, electricity, providing power to their customers, and are also growing in sort of political power around the state. But they also have a very significant and meaningful purpose, and a lot of that is wrapped up in the evolution of the energy system to a more decentralized, distributed thing. And so we're working in a number of, we Center for Climate Protection in a number of areas on this front. 3 grant-funded projects, one with the California Energy Commission on building efficiency optimization, and that's with MCE. And you'll hear a little bit more about that one from Don later on. We also have a National Renewable Energy Lab funded project on designing advanced rate structures that will incentivize DER deployments, and that's with Lancaster Choice Energy and Peninsula Clean Energy. And a small grant from the Adobe Fund on providing tools and resources to community choice agencies on advancing distributed energy resources. So that's some of our work in that arena. So yes, we have the Business of Local Energy Symposium coming up, and if you're still thinking about getting a ticket and attending, maybe some of the things we talked about today will help you make up your mind. And if you can't make it, some of the things we'll be talking about today are sort of samplings of what's going to be shared at the symposium. And so let's see, that's what I was going to say about that. So it's a 2-day event this year. The first day, Monday, June 4th, is going to be a distributed energy resource workshop. The keynote speaker for that is Andrew McAllister, California Energy Commission commissioner, and really delving into the risks and benefits, opportunities of community choice agencies relative to distributed energy resources. I'll also mention that we have organized a tour of the California Independent System Operator, but that is sold out. So there will be a group of folks visiting CAISO. And then on the big day, the symposium day, the keynote speaker is UC Berkeley Professor Dan Kamen. He's pretty well known in the energy circles, Professor of Energy, Energy Resources Group at Berkeley. And so he's the keynote speaker. If you've never experienced Dan Kamen speaking, he's quite a great speaker. So looking forward to that. And then just a little bit of a sampling of some of the panel sessions we're going to be hosting on energy democracy, legislative and regulatory arena, distributed energy resources and its relation to big data, electrifying everything, and a geographically focused panel on community choice in the Central Valley. And for today's webinar, one of the things we're looking to address is that community choice is under sort of attack and facing lots of challenges, and we're hearing things that have gone on for, claims, assertions that have gone on forever, things like community choice agencies only use renewable energy credits, they don't really build anything, they're not paying their fair share, all these kinds of things. And I think what you'll hear from Beth and Dawn it really sort of belies all of those claims, because community choice agencies are doing all kinds of extraordinary things. And so I think without any further ado, I am now going to switch over to our next presenter, Dawn. And Dawn will take it away once I switch over her. So Dawn, get ready to have control of the screen. So you should now have control of the screen, Dawn.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much, Woody, for the great introduction and overview. I really appreciate it. So it looks like I'm not able to click to the next slide. Maybe someone can do that.
You can try your down arrow, or in the lower left are those other arrows. So, and you want to go to the next screen? I'll just do it from here because I still have control, or should.
Righty. Thanks for doing that. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about the things that we've been able to accomplish at MCE through the CCA model, and I think that what I'm going to talk about today is something that it's an example of what many CCAs may be doing in the future. Some CCAs are already doing a lot of the things that we are, and there's a lot of opportunities to do, many more things. I think that innovation is really the name of the game with CCAs, and there's a lot of tangible benefits that we can point to already that really dismiss the challenges or the myths slide that Woody showed a minute ago. So I just wanted to start with a backdrop reminder that CCA was created by the legislature. Post-energy crisis, there was an identified need for public accountability and local control, and CCA was seen as a solution to help address that issue in a proactive way. The enabling legislation was passed in 2002 that allowed CCA to happen in the state. And then there was some additional legislation passed in 2011 that established a Bill of Rights for CCAs and a code of conduct to control others in the market. So with that backdrop, and we can go to the next slide, Woody, local accountability and service is really the foundation of CCAs. This is a picture of our board of directors. We have 27 elected folks. These are either mayors or council members or board of supervisors, representatives from the counties that we serve. MCE is currently serving many communities within 4 counties. So we have 33 cities in our service area, and the board that you see here is responsible for establishing our rates, identifying our procurement targets, determining what resources we want to put into our portfolio, and also the programmatic initiatives that I'll talk about in a minute. They're all under the purview of our board. The next slide is our mission, and you can click a few more times, Woody. It's got a few more lines there. Yeah, maybe just 2 more clicks there. That just gives you a sense of the MCE mission. We formed in 2008 with, the goal of addressing climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions through the things listed here. You can go to the next slide, Woody. We've been able to accomplish a lot already. This is a slide showing you where our renewables are coming from in California. All of our long-term supply contracts are based in California. So what you'll see here with the circles is different types of technology. We have wind, biogas, solar. Many of the projects that we've had built for our portfolio have created a lot of union jobs. And you can see a high concentration of projects right near our service area, and that's intentional. Our board is interested in creating jobs locally, stimulating the economy, and getting projects built near our customer base. But we supplement that with some larger projects in areas where there's more land and, in some cases, better production of renewable energy, particularly from renewables. So this is just a quick overview. Yeah, you can go to the next slide, Woody. Thanks. This is one other way of looking at the MCE portfolio. This shows you what we expect to see going out through 2027 as far as our portfolio goes. You can see the conventional sliver on the top is phasing out as we transition to a all GHG-free portfolio by 2025. Using a lot of renewables and then also some hydroelectric power. I think one thing that's worth noting is down on the bottom, you'll see the base load supply that we have, geothermal and biomass. Those are important resources because they produce 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The variable renewable resources are a little bit harder to control. And so that's something that some of our programmatic efforts is aimed at addressing. Next slide. So this is a zooming in on our service area to give you a sense of some of the projects that we've had built locally. And I'm not going to go through all of these in detail, but you can get a sense of these, where they're located and what type of technology we're using. Most of them are solar, and we have a feed-in tariff that we implemented just in our first year of launch in 2010. And through our feed-in tariff, we've been able to provide an above-market rate to any landowners or developers that want to build a project within our service territory. This is a standardized 20-year agreement that we will sign with any local project that can deliver power to us, and we'll pay them an above-market rate. So you can go to the next slide, Woody, and I'll show you an example. This is the very first feed-in tariff project that we implemented. This is at an airport in San Rafael. Created some local jobs. It's a 1 megawatt project, and it's still delivering today. So that's our first example. Next slide. This is the Freethy Industrial Park project, and this is a more recent project. It was built in Richmond, which is part of our service area. It supported quite a few jobs, and I want to mention here, Richmond Build is one of our great community partners that does a really good job of training local folks in the Richmond area and some from outside of Richmond to get into the green collar workforce. 70% of the people that they serve are people of color. many of the, because Richmond has a very high unemployment rate, this job training program is a really great way to transition folks into long-term career pathways. And we've partnered with them on quite a few local projects to create a lot of new opportunities for folks. They also serve folks that have about 30% of the folks they serve have a criminal justice history as well. So it's a great way to provide new opportunities for folks that have had challenges in the past. So this project created jobs for those folks. The other thing I want to highlight on this slide is the yearly revenue that's going to the landowner. So because we pay an above market rate for our local projects, this landowner is seeing about $500,000 in revenue for having this project on his land. And before the project was here, the land was just sitting there. So it's a great way to kind of create a win-win situation here. And we're also powering 600 homes per year, which is a nice value add. We can go to the next slide. So this is the Novato Buck Institute. This is another local project that we got built in our service area. And this one was not through our feed-in tariff, but I put it in here to give you an example of another structure we've been able to use to incentivize local development. Back in 2011, just a year after our launch, we entered into a power supply contract for 30 megawatts of solar power in the Central Valley, with the agreement from the developer that they would also build a 1 megawatt solar project at the same price in our service territory. And this is the result of that agreement. They built this project at a nonprofit research facility in Novato, which is part of our service area. It currently serves as a carport shade structure for the employee parking, and delivering about a megawatt of energy, and is another I think, innovative way that CCAs can get projects built locally if that's part of their mission. Next slide. And then this is the last project I'll highlight, which is our most recent project that just celebrated a ribbon cutting. This is the MCE Solar One project. It's the largest publicly owned solar project in the Bay Area, 10.5 megawatts, and it targeted local labor. We had a requirement of 50% local labor from Richmond in building this project. And in order to achieve that, we had to start early. About 2 years before the groundbreaking on this project, we began funding curriculum and training at Richmond Build for folks to get trained up so that we'd have a pool of people to pull from when it was time to build the project. And this was a really successful partnership with Richmond Build and also with quite a few unions. You can see the unions listed on the bottom of the slide, and it was a really great partnership also with Chevron, the landowner, and the city of Richmond, who helped us make it happen. This also, I should mention, was not through our feed-in tariff. It was through a direct power purchase agreement with a vendor. S Power was the financier of the project. They were great to work with, and then Synergy was the developer that got everything in the ground. So definitely a big public-private partnership with a lot of wins all across the board. The next slide is talking about our programs, and I know Beth Vaughn is probably going to talk a little bit more about what other CCAs are doing. This slide touches on some of what other CCAs are doing, but it gives you a sense of the wide range of programs that CCAs have launched already. And these are just examples of programs that other CCAs can launch in the future. MCE has launched a lot of programs, mainly because we've been around longer, so we've had more time to get into all these things. But there's a wide range. We have a battery storage rate right now. We have a customer load shifting program that is aimed at getting folks to shift when they use their energy to the middle of the day when we have a lot of solar in our portfolio, and shifting people away from using energy in the evening when there's more reliance on conventional power sources. We have electric vehicle incentive program and load shifting program. And we also have a fuel switching program that's working to get folks to switch from gas appliances to electric appliances. And we'll be, in partnership with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, we're going to be allocating $1 million over the next year to 500 homes in Napa that were affected by the fires last fall. And this will be fuel switching dollars to enable those homes to be rebuilt without needing any gas infrastructure because they'll be using all electric. So that's an example. We're also doing a lot of fuel switching in the multifamily sector and in affordable housing. And of course, we also have a net energy metering program and an on-bill repayment program, and quite a few energy efficiency programs that we offer with a heavy emphasis in the low-income and multifamily sectors. You can move on to the next slide. We have a smart charge program that is aimed at load shifting to get folks to shift their usage from the evening hours to more to the middle of the day. We provide incentives for folks to use these devices. You can go to the next slide. We also have an innovative grant with the California Energy Commission that Woody mentioned earlier. We're partnering with the Center for Climate Protection and other entities on this project, and we're looking at ways we can get more distributed energy resources deployed as a kind of a sample for other CCAs to follow. With this program and with really all the things I've been talking about for the last 10 minutes, this is really driven by our local governing board that is really invested in seeing tangible results in our community, and it's kind of a natural fit for a local CCA governing board to want to see these types of programs that benefit the agency and also benefit the community and the customers at the same time. It really helps that we have local government relationships in launching these types of programs because we can work with stakeholders in the community that already have ties to our elected officials. And we can move on to the next slide. I'm just about to wrap up here. The last thing I want to touch on as far as programs is that we've partnered with Grid Alternatives and others that do low-income solar installations and allocated quite a bit towards that program to get solar installed on low-income rooftops. And I think this is an interesting transition that we've gone through at the beginning of launching MCE. We had a solar rebate program that went to anyone installing solar, and we realized that it was being used sort of as icing on the cake for folks that were going to be installing solar anyway, and we decided it would be better to redirect those dollars just to the low-income installations, many of which were facing significant barriers in getting completed. And we allow that funding to be used for panel upgrades or other elements that are tied to a solar installation if needed. And we've been able to see a lot of results from this program. Next slide. This is just to wrap up and remind folks, how MCE and other CCAs can really be of service. We're exceeding the renewable portfolio standards. I didn't get into the details on that, but I should mention that as of last year, we were at 62% renewable content with mostly in-state California-based resources. And that's for our default product. We also have 100% renewable product. And we're on a trajectory to be 100% greenhouse gas free, as I mentioned, by 2025. So we're really accelerating California's movement towards greenhouse gas goals and helping a lot with the state achieving those goals. We've also done a lot around reliability by building local generation projects, shifting our load to times of the day when there's more renewables in our portfolio. And we've created a lot of community benefits through, social equity focus, workforce development, and transparency. I think that's the final point I want to make is that local governments are, by their nature, have a lot of transparency, so the customers and the community can get very engaged in what we're doing. And I think that's reflected in the concrete achievements that I just described. And next slide, Woody, that is it for my overview.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks very much, Dawn. Great job. And happy to say that one of those folks that came through that Richmond Build project is going to be at the symposium in a plenary panel. So Richmond Build and Grid Alternatives also involved in that. And love that program chart, showing all of the variety of of types of programs and how so many of them really relate to the local level, and that's where community choice can really play a great role. So I will be switching us over to Beth. And Beth, I am going to attempt to give you control here. So let's see if it works for you, and if it doesn't, we'll just do the same thing that I did with Dawn, but you should have control now.
No, I've got the same problem Dawn had.
Really? Huh, I'm doing the same thing. There you go. You're doing that. I'm not doing that.
Okay.
There you go.
Cool. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Woody, for inviting me to participate today. As he mentioned, I'm Executive Director of the California Community Choice Association. And I realize that someone outside my window has been starting up a chainsaw. So Woody, let me know if it gets noisy and I'll move. But yes, let me flip to the next slide. As Woody said, it's about power and purpose. And what I want to do is helicopter up to a statewide perspective on CCAs. Dawn did a fantastic job talking about MCE, and as you can see from the slide up there, of course, we all know MCE was the one that began it all once they launched service in 2010. And on this slide, it just shows all the CCAs that are currently serving load. And I like the timeline. I like how we can move along and see who came when, and then look at the projects and how they've grown in a very, very short period of time. But for those of you that don't know, at the end of 2017, we had 9 CCAs serving load. And in 2018 alone, in this 5 months that have gone by, 5 more CCAs have launched service. So we're up to 14 CCAs on this timeline. And on the, there we go, on the next slide there, I show the anticipated CCA service launch dates. So where you see in blue, in bold, those are dates that have passed and launches have occurred. In the light blue, dates that are coming up. This is both new service and expanded, as you can see on the right-hand side there. So in June, there are quite a few more CCAs serving both new service and existing customers. And then also again in July, August, September. And we have a couple of TBD dates there and some dates in the new year in 2019 where some of the different phases will be launching. So it's extremely exciting. There's a lot going on, and it's a lot to keep track of, which is one of the things we try to do at Cal CCA. See, that didn't move. Hold on. There we go. It's a little bit slow, but Woody, of course, Center for Climate Protection they have a fantastic interactive map on their website, but we do need a map to use in some of our print materials. So this is a map that we update monthly to keep track of the changes in CCA communities. So if you look at the top right there, where we have the list of serving customers, we've got those 14 different CCAs. And some of them where they are a small city, they're simply a dot on our map, but others we fill in the counties, and then you go to Woody's map where you can drill down into the details of the member cities and the member counties. So that's an overview. Okay, let's see, it goes to the next one. Great, okay, so here's a really ugly slide that I will endeavor to make prettier going forward, and it's very dense. And the other thing I'll mention about it is that these numbers are incorrect as soon as I print them. And this is because things are happening so quickly. However, I do want to highlight a few numbers because I think there's some important information here. And I think maybe it answers one of the questions that Woody put up there about CCAs just using RECs. So what you see here is some stats. We've now got 22 CCAs there in the left-hand column listed. 4 of them I don't have data for yet, although I have to mention more data came in overnight. Again, don't look at the detail, but let's look at that bottom row. where it has CCA totals and averages. So I think the important information there is that there's going to be, by the end of 2018, more than 4.7 million customer accounts. The minimum RPS in 2018 is exceeding the state mandate. We have there an average of 41%. So 2018, the unbundled REC number there is very, very low. The peak load is almost 9,000 megawatts. And then what I think is important to look here is this tells the story itself in terms of 2016, 2017, and 2018. You can see the increase in the annual load growth. So from approximately 5,500 in 2016 to now over 40,000 gigawatt hours in 2018. So what's our conclusion? Well, it illustrates what we all know, which is that CCA footprint is quickly expanding throughout California. Flip to the next one. All right, so the topic of this webinar I noted is power and purpose, and I thought maybe we could look at the power side first. And again, picking up on Woody's myth, one of his myths up there, the idea that CCAs don't build anything. I want to talk a little bit, take a few moments to talk about that. So now this slide here I know has been around the block for a few months now. I think people are fairly familiar with it. But let's begin with this slide and then talk a little bit about what the CCAs are currently doing. So there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of questions about, are CCAs actually building anything? And what are we doing in terms of long-term contracts? So in this slide here, this is a compilation of only 4 CCAs, 4 out of the 5 CCAs that were the first to launch service, if you think back to the first slide I had there. I was going to say the first CCAs to launch service in California were the first to execute the contracts to build new renewable projects. And we tallied up some numbers and came to a total that CCAs have supported or are supporting over $2.5 billion in construction of California renewables. And with the majority of these projects being built with project labor agreements. So on this slide here, and Dawn dove down into some of the MCA examples, but we have here 1,136 megawatts of projects listed. Approximately 1,014, or 89%, are supported by long-term contracts of more than 10 years. Of approximately 276 megawatts of facilities already in operation, 53% of the projects have long-term power purchase agreements. And of the remaining 747 megawatts under development in the list, 100% of those projects are supported by long-term contracts. So you hear Dawn did expand upon what MCE is doing. And again, I'll repeat her point that, MCE has met the 65% long-term contracting requirements for RPS compliance years ahead of schedule. Sonoma Clean Power launched in 2014, and it's got 8 contracts for 134 megawatts of new solar and wind projects. Lancaster Choice Energy launched in 2015, and it also has executed their 20-year contract for newly constructed solar project in the city of Lancaster. And then Peninsula Clean Energy launched less than 2 years ago in October of 2016. And it issued RFOs for these renewable projects totaling 300 megawatts, and they'll be constructed in Merced and King counties for contract terms of 20 years and 15 years. The one missing up here is San Francisco. Remember, that was the 5th CCA to launch. They began serving customers in May 2016. And its supply portfolio includes long-term contracts for 147 megawatts of California wind and solar with terms between 10 and 22 years. 2 of these projects expect to complete construction and begin deliveries in 2019 and 2020. So already I'm tipping off the table here, so you can tell next time, Woody, you invite me on, I'm going to have an updated table because we have a lot of exciting things happening. And that brings me to this slide of what is going on in 2018. So there were a number of solicitations in 2017 and in the winter of 2018, and there are a number of CCAs in final steps of negotiations here with counterparties. And I just noted up here that, you know, it does take several years to create a diverse portfolio. And I think this demonstrates the ability to build off of the lessons learned from other CCAs to be able to launch, you know, there still is a transition period, but to be kind of ahead of the curve. So for example, you see here on this slide, I mentioned joint procurement between Monterey Bay Community Power and Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Monterey Bay only has just launched service March 1st, I think it was, to the county facilities. And already they're ahead of the game. By the end of this month, they'll have completed negotiations with 3 renewable developers. Collectively, it's for about 500 megawatts of solar and wind and about 90 megawatts of storage. And these 3 projects will be operational by 2021. And the notional value of the 3 contracts is $1 billion. So yes, a lot going on. I have up there also the California Choice Energy Authority, which I'm sure most people who joined us have heard about. This joint powers authority that was formed to provide services to some of the smaller cities. And that includes the city of Lancaster, Pico Rivera, San Jacinto, and Rancho Mirage. I'll just mention, you know, Rancho Mirage Energy Authority launched the 1st of this month. They're our newest and youngest CCA. CCEA is going to be issuing a request for proposals for approximately 150 megawatts of renewable power. They're going to be seeking long-term Category 1 RPS eligible projects with completion dates in 2020 and 2021. Also I have up there is Redwood Coast Energy Authority, and they've got some exciting developments if you follow what's going on up north there. They have a particular interest in local biomass, so they've done some PPAs for biomass with options for renewal. They've developed a microgrid that Redwood Coast owns and operates the assets. It's got a combination of solar, battery storage, and it's also been done in partnership with PG&E. And then I don't know if Woody, you've mentioned on some of these previous webinars, but they have an RFQ for development partners. It's just been completed for what's likely going to be the first West Coast offshore wind project and possibly the first floating wind project in the U.S. So some excitement there. And then, of course, Sonoma Clean Power. They've got some new renewable projects. Again, they had an RFP out for long-term Category 1 RPS eligible resources, and they received over 80 bids. So that tells us the market is healthy. They're in the final stages of entering into 3 additional PPAs for Northern California projects totaling 70 megawatts of solar, 80 megawatts of wind, and 5 megawatts of storage. And these new projects will start production at varying times between 2020 and 2023. And then finally, I just want to mention the East Bay Community Power joint RFO with PG&E. And East Bay Community Power is going to launch service June 1st. So they're out ahead of the game. As I mentioned, partnering with PG&E, and Nick Chassett of East Bay and Roy Kuga of PG&E have both been out talking about talking up this initiative. Their RFO is soliciting competitive offers for energy capacity and reliability projects in Alameda County in order to enable the retirement of Dynegy's aging Oakland power plant as of, I think the date they're looking at is summer of 2022. And that's a really interesting project in terms of them going out jointly and what are the products that each of them are looking for to add to their procurement portfolio. So those are some of the examples, and I think what I'd mention here to folks that are listening is to remind us that the other part of this is that all of these CCAs are developing their integrated resource management plans, and the development of these plans, they're due for submission to the Commission on the 1st of August of 2018, and I think the development provides an excellent opportunity for each CCA to consider and discuss with their boards and their communities the best procurement strategies that they need to adopt going forward. So again, I hope by kind of summarizing some of this, I've blown away that myth, that CCAs don't build anything and that they're not entering into long-term contracts particularly for renewable resources, because that certainly isn't the case. Watching the time there. I'll be quick, but here's another ugly slide. Dawn's slides were much prettier, but if you recognize the similarities here, I've taken Dawn's slide where she had 5 CCAs indicating the CCA customer programs, and on here there are 15 CCAs. So this is what you can do overnight: is extend the program. So yes, we'll make this a lot prettier. We'll also make it a little more accurate, but the new CCAs are excited to be part of this. I think, to me, this is the purpose part of the story. This is where I believe CCAs truly do bring added value. And, how do they do that? And I think this is specifically these community-based programs, because what they're doing is tens of millions of dollars are now staying in the community instead of being paid out to shareholders. I think that's enormously exciting and empowering. And in particular, when we think about some of those goals that Dawn was talking about, I think in her last slide, if I just pick up on a few of those, like, for example, decarbonization, right? GHG emissions reductions. A lot of the CCA communities were formed because of their climate action plans that had been put together by their local councils, and they wanted to make them actionable. Well, you look at all of those programs that Dawn ran through on the left-hand side there, a lot of those are about delivering real emission reductions, like the battery storage rate, EV programs, there's EV rates, EV incentives, EV load shifting, energy efficiency, feed-in tariffs, fuel switching, NEM. I mean, all of those things make such a difference. The other thing I would say is jobs, right? This is creating real jobs in the communities. Again, I think Dawn, with some of the stories she told, is illustrative of this fact. And then local investment. I think that's another very, very important thing. And you see that happening, both the jobs and local investment in terms of the EV bus program that Lancaster has, or if you look at some of these community energy grant and outreach grant programs. The other thing that I think this provides us an opportunity to do is to address through these customer programs is environmental justice and social equity issues. And I'll just mention that CalCCA is in the process of forming an environmental justice staff committee, which I personally am very excited about. I think there's huge potential here. And so in terms of scope of work, the first thing will be to survey what is already being done by some of the existing CCAs and also the cities and the counties that make up the CCAs. And then based on these lessons learned, we'll be able to identify best practices. And then we have an ability through CalCCA, through our structure, to communicate these best practices to the other CCAs. And then I think, as you saw in that matrix, a slide that I put up there, there's a lot of early adopters. I have to say the CCAs are enormously generous with one another about sharing the programs, and someone takes on someone else's template and then makes it better, basically. So by learning from each other, I feel that we can accelerate adoption and build on what's already been done, as I mentioned, to make it better. I won't go through them all because I'm looking at the time here, but certainly we've been focusing on, and Dawn again spoke about how rooftop solar has been made accessible for some of the underserved communities. It's not just MCE, Clean Power SF has programs, Lancaster Choice has programs, certainly in the energy efficiency area for home comfort, health, and savings. Again, MCE, Sonoma Clean Power have been leading the way, but again, if we go back to that matrix, Redwood Coast, Prime, Lancaster, they've all got programs in development, building off of what our existing CCAs or our early CCAs have created. Similarly, in local job training and employment, and of course, I don't know if you saw in that matrix, but access to electric vehicle programs. We used to always just talk about the Sonoma Clean Power Program, but there were 12 CCAs out of the 15 listed in that matrix who are indicated that they're developing EV programs. And when you think about GHG emissions reductions, the transportation sector is where we've really got to make a difference. So in conclusion, I'll just say that Cal CCA, on the slide here, we're helping cut costs for all electricity customers, helping local communities solve problems and invest in solutions, and helping California achieve our climate goals. And we're doing it by moving forward together. Great. Thank you, Woody. That's it from me.
Wow, great. Thanks so much, Beth. I'm really excited to hear about that Environmental Justice Committee. Looking forward to seeing that getting up and running. I just want to mention, since you referenced whether or not we had covered the offshore floating wind project going on up off of Humboldt County. No, we haven't, but it's maybe a good idea for a future webinar to look at some of these more exotic or future possible large-scale and or small-scale stuff. And one last real quick thing I'll mention, East Bay Community Energy, I just think, they're working on a local development business plan that I think is probably one of the most robust local development business plans out there. So I think that's one to sort of keep eyes on. And with that, I will turn it over basically back to Nina to help us with the Q&A. And so that is coming up right now. Nina, are you still, you need to unmute, you did unmute yourself, that's good. And do we have some questions that have come in for Dawn or Beth, or both?
Yeah, so this first question is for Dawn. How, with the recently approved California requirement that all new homes will have solar panels beginning in 2020, impact MCE's programs, incentives, and your distributed generation initiatives?
Oh, that's a really great question. The first thing that I thought of when I saw that announcement is, well, first of all, that it's wonderful. It's been a long time coming, and I think it's great that California is making that step. I think that the concern that crossed my mind after being excited about the news is that we already have a lot of solar on the system in California during the day, and we are making good use of that solar energy is really important, and making sure that it's not being curtailed is important in order to allow it to continue to be an economic resource that where we can continue to get more of it built and make sure we're fully utilizing it. So I think that what we'll need to be cognizant of is that we're likely to see, with more rooftop solar in the state, we're going to see more. I guess it would be lower demand in the middle of the day when you have that solar contributing to behind the meter production, and then we'll see we'll continue to see that steep ramp in the evening where there's a lot of new load hitting all at one time, and making sure that we have resources that can handle that. I think that's an argument for storage and other technologies that can help balance out that shift, but it's definitely going to kind of accentuate that issue that we've been seeing on the grid in California already. And so new solutions, I'm sure, will be coming into play to help with that issue.
Okay. And this next question is for the both of you. What is the Cal CCA and MCE position on the new CPUC Green Book that has come out?
Yeah, I can start with that, and Beth, feel free to chime in. I think first it's important to note that this is a draft, and unfortunately there have been some articles and some quotes in the press referring to this as if it's a report that has been kind of a done deal, and it's kind of been portrayed as something that the Commission has put its blessing on. This actually hasn't even gone to the full Commission. It is a product of an internal policy and planning department within the CPUC has not been voted on or discussed in any public setting by commissioners. So it's still a draft form, and MCE is pulling together comments that will be responsive. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's Woody. I just wanted to make sure, I think all that has been mentioned is that it's the Green Book, but maybe can you just explain to people what the Green Book is, what the topic is, because some folks on the call may not know what the Green Book is.
Yeah, thanks, Woody, of course. So really this has been there's been a project underway at the California Public Utilities Commission called the Customer Choice Project. And it's been going on for the last 9 months or so. And it's been an effort where the CPUC is looking for input and developing a set of kind of issues that they've identified that may be issues that they want to address related to the new choices that are available in the electricity market today, both through community choice aggregation, but also through other ways that customers are able to utilize technologies that make them less reliant on the traditional model of electricity supply provided by the investor-owned utilities in the past. And I think that one of the issues that the CPUC has been raising through this customer choice project through some workshops, which they refer to as en bancs, and a hearing that they held at the legislature. There was some focus on kind of who's in charge, who's in charge of the procurement planning in this new transition that we're seeing in California. I think that the CPUC is used to serving as a regulator, and so kind of figuring out what their role is in this new paradigm is a big part of what they are grappling with. And we will be providing detailed comments by the beginning of June, which folks can access because they'll be publicly available. But I think that kind of to summarize some of the key reactions that we have, first of all, I think it's unfortunate that there's been a characterization that there's something wrong. There's kind of a sense of fear being promoted in this draft report that is not grounded in any facts. It also hasn't identified any actual issues. There's some talk about reliability concerns. To date, all CCAs have been complying with all the same rules and requirements that the investor-owned utilities comply with regarding reliability, and we're following all the state mandates around renewable portfolio standard and all the other obligations that CCAs have, which are many, are being complied with. So I think that the draft report is rather misinformed, and I'm hopeful that the comments that we submit in early June will be incorporated into the CPUC's final report and help inform their thinking so that they have more of a fact-based document when they're ready to call it complete. And Beth, do you want to add anything?
So I would just agree with everything Dawn said. I think if you're taking a big step back and looking at the document, in my mind, there's a lot of holes. There's a lot of things that are missing. And as Dawn pointed out, there's no recommendations. There's some observations in the document. But, there's, for instance, I'll just give you an example. There's sort of a fear-mongering in some of the press statements that came out or in President Picker's letter at the top of the Green Book. And yet, this discussion about there's no plan, we may be drifting towards another energy crisis. And yet when I read the document, for example, there's very little in there about the integrated resource planning process, which I mentioned in my presentation, which specifically in terms of the approval of those plans, the Commission is going to be looking at system reliability and decarbonization. And those are two out of the three. I guess the third primary objective that they've structured this report around, or this draft paper around, is affordability as well. So I sort of feel like it was a first cut at something here, but there needs to be a lot more discussion. I would also agree a portion of the report looks at 4 other jurisdictions in terms of other states and another country in terms of how they deliver choice. And when you look at those sorts of examples, you have to also look at the regulatory frameworks that are operating in those regions, and that leads one to ask the question of, well, what if we're talking about what is the future role of the utility? How does the retail energy market? What's the future for it here in California? You have to also ask the question, what is the role of the commission going forward? And I don't think the document does that either. So, I think the idea is to begin a discussion, and as Dawn mentioned, there's going to be comments due, and then I believe there'll be perhaps another one of these workshops and further comments or a final document coming out. So there's still a lot of things, a lot of discussion going around, and we'll see how this moves forward.
Thank you both. Nina, I think we do have time for one more question. Nina, you're muted. So
yes.
There you go.
Okay. So one more question. We have a few, and again, if we don't answer your question, we can always email you and answer your question that way. But I think the last one we can ask here is for Beth specifically, what position is Cal CCA taking with respect to grid regionalization, and how might regionalization affect local energy choice?
Oh, great question. Really great question. So we at Cal CCA just actually submitted a letter to the legislature saying that we are in support of regionalization. Now, remember, this is Cal CCA as the trade association, so that does not necessarily mean all of the CCAs that our members are supporting regionalization. It's a big discussion. In fact, actually, let me back up. I think that a lot of folks support the concept of regionalization. It's always the devil's in the detail, right? And so as AB 813, as it's drafted, we are in support of. And I think that Dawn highlighted this a bit when she was answering the question about, the new policy out of the Energy Commission about rooftop solar is we do have an issue as we move towards achieving our goals that we have for renewables in the state, and in particular with the addition of solar. We have curtailment issues now, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with the belly of the duck. And so there is, I am convinced by the argument that by regionalizing, that will help to solve that problem. I have to say, though, having learned more and more about the other entities that are moving into the space in the West, I'm more worried about if we don't have the ISO regionalized. I'm concerned that we become an island, and perhaps surrounded by, players, markets that are not as robust or as transparent as the Cal ISO market. So that's kind of my short answer, and I see it's 1 minute to 12, so I'm follow-up question.
We are going to need to have that be the last word, and perhaps we will have, before that whole regionalization decision is made, we will have a webinar on that topic. So just a couple quick reminders. The Symposium coming up June 4th and 5th. I don't think I put the link there for folks that might need that. LocalEnergyBiz with a Z.com is a quick way to get there, localenergybiz.com. Lean Energy Market Call coming up on June 8th at 10 a.m. The Statewide Energy Efficiency Collaborative Forum, June 20th and 21st. It's always a great event. We are planning to have a community choice related session at that forum. And our next webinar is scheduled for Wednesday, June 27th at 11 a.m. and still determining the topic for that one. And if there are any questions or anything that we didn't cover, or follow up with me, that's my contact information. Thank you so much, Dawn and Beth, for your excellent presentations, and thank you everybody for joining us. And that does conclude our webinar number 9 in our series. So thanks again, and have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Woody.